V. Chandrasekhar is working as lecturer in philosophy in the Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda College since 1996. He has been awarded the degree of PhD by the University of Madras for his work in the area Yoga and Analytical Psychology. He has been teaching Indian philosophy, Western philosophy, and recent European philosophy for undergraduate and postgraduate students. He has participated in many seminars and presented papers in a variety of topics. He has also reviewed 2 books in Ethics and Indian Culture published by the Tamil Nadu Textbook Society for Plus 2 course.
Welcome to the UGC series of lectures in philosophy. In this episode, I have 2 of my students here. Let me introduce them to you. Here I have Mr. Vijay Sarathi.
Hello sir.
And Mr. Badri.
Hello sir.
I have been dealing with the ideas of Greek thought, Greek philosophers. We started up with Thales, Anaximander, etc., wherein we were talking about how these people viewed the universe. Now, in the last episode, I started off with the ideas of Xenophon. With the advent of Xenophon, there is a slight shift in the philosophy of the Greeks. That is, from metaphysics, there is a shift towards positive science that we find first time in the philosophy of Xenophon, because I told in the last episode that Xenophon is more of a religious reformer. Earlier to Xenophon, they were talking of God in terms of certain figures like sun, moon, etc. But then Xenophon tried to view God differently. That is what we saw in the last class. Today we will be continuing on that, continuation of the talk on transition of the Greek thought from metaphysics to positive science. Here Xenophon is born at Colophon, which is now part of Turkey. I told you in the earlier classes that this whole place was supposed to be the mainland of Greece earlier, wherein this particular place Colophon is the birthplace of Xenophon, but from here he is supposed to have founded a school which came to be known as the Eleatic school. The Elea is here, South Italy. But what is the connection between Xenophon of Colophon and Elea? This cannot be known right now, for the simple reason there is no evidence about Xenophon's visit to Italy. However, there are certain remnants of his thought which we find in the philosophy of the Eleatics. Hence, he is considered to be the founder of the Eleatic school. This I told you last class, but certain few people say that Parmenides is the founder of Eleatic school. That we will come to later. Let us have some of the views of Xenophon on God. That is what we saw in the last class. We will just run through them. Xenophon attacked the earlier conceptions of God in order to conceive a purer and nobler conception of God. He seems to be the originator of the quarrel between science and philosophy. Earlier on, philosophy and science were not de-linked, but first time in the philosophy of Xenophon, we find a slight shift between philosophy and science, because he attacked the popular conception of God. Prior to Xenophon, the Greeks believed God to be like a human being, having certain qualities, having a particular shape, things like that. But Xenophon said that we cannot conceive of God on those lines, because what happened was, when we considered God in terms of a shape or things like that, or having some qualities, sometimes they did even attribute certain negative qualities to God. This was not acceptable to Xenophon. Hence, he said that we must have a nobler, pure conception of God. Therefore, he attacked the conception of God. Secondly, he was against polytheism, but held to pantheism. World is God, a sentient being, though without organ of sense. That is, people say that there are many gods. Some people, that is called as polytheism. But Xenophon says that there is only one God. And what is that God? Where is he? To him, the God is in the world. Hence, we can say that his monotheism is a kind of pantheism. Here again, he says that God cannot be compared to humans. Earlier on, the Greeks tried to conceive God in terms of the human qualities, but Xenophon clearly says that God cannot be considered or compared to man either in form or in intelligence. Here, why this is more important is because his conception of God as one seems to have suggested the philosophy of Parmenides, which we are going to see later. Parmenides seems to have built on Xenophon's. As I told you earlier, to Xenophon's, God is one. This idea of one seems to have influenced Parmenides, and hence certain scholars say that Xenophon is the founder. How? Because Parmenides is going to say that there is only one reality, and that is being. This idea may have been influenced by Xenophon's view of that one God. However, Xenophon also had other views. Now, what we saw were only his views on the God, and how he rejected the earlier conceptions of God. But Xenophon did have conceptions of other things also. Let us see them now. First, earth has risen out of the sea and sinks into it only to rise again. Here we find the cosmology of Xenophon. To him, the earth has come out of sea and it goes back to it. We saw with respect to Thales and Anaximander and all as to how the universe would have arisen. Similarly, Xenophon also says that the world or the earth has come out of this sea. Secondly, sun traverses in a straight line. Now, we all know that sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Whether sun moves or not, that is a different question, but we commonly believe that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. But here, what happens next day? The same sun rises and sets again. But here Xenophon gives a different view. He says that every day the new sun is born. That is what we have in the third point. A new sun is formed from the vapors of the sea. That is, if you are going to say that the sun rises at one place, traverses in a straight line and then goes off, what happens the next day? Is there no sun? Xenophon says, no, there is sun, but that sun comes differently from the vapors of the sea. Now, here you must understand, earlier on sun, moon and other planets were considered to be divine beings. In fact, we saw at places where they considered these planets to be gods or some divine entities. But here Xenophon tries to say that these things come out of the vapor of the sea. That is what we are going to see now. Suns and stars are not divine, but burning mass of vapor. That is, from the vapors of the sea, the sun has arisen and it goes out, which means that every day a new sun arises. This is what he views about the other things of the world. Now, these are the views of Xenophon, wherein we find him to be more of a religious reformer. As I said earlier, he was talking about some of the conceptions of God, how God has been viewed earlier and how they are wrong. He tried to point out the mistakes in those conceptions, and finally he comes out with his own ideas of God. But then he too gives his cosmology of the world as coming out of sea and things like that. But one basic point that he said, namely that God is one, is very, very important here, and it is because of this he is considered to be the founder of the Eleatic school. However, when we talk of the Eleatic school, a major contributor to that area comes to our mind, and he is Parmenides. He is a very, very important philosopher here, especially when it comes to the transition of the metaphysical thought into positive science. Parmenides is a very, very important contributor. So, let us see him now, see about his philosophy now. But before that, as I told you earlier, the conception of God as one is given in Parmenides in a different format, wherein he says that there is only one reality. He calls that reality as being. That is what we are going to see now, but before that we will see his place. We will go to the map now. Parmenides is born at Elea in 514 BC. Elea, I told you, is here, South Italy. Here, Eleatic school is a school of philosophers who belonged to the place or city called Elea. Here, Parmenides is a major influence in this section. He has spoken about the world in terms of one ultimate reality, and that reality he calls it as being. That is what we will be seeing now. Parmenides was a Pythagorean in his early youth, but changed his stand later. His views result from observing the transitoriness of things. Now, Parmenides was influenced by the Pythagorean philosophy at the beginning. So, he started off as a Pythagorean, but at some point of time he changed his stand later. And why did he change his stand? It is because he saw that everything is changing in the world. If everything is changing, what is all that? Can we know something that changes? It is very difficult to understand that which changes. So, he concludes that there can be no knowledge of that which is changing. No knowledge, we cannot have any kind of knowledge about that which is changing. Now, I am Chandrasekhar. I have been born at some particular point of time. I was a child, I was grown up, I am growing, there is a lot of change in me. If you are going to say that this particular man is changing, can you talk to me? It is very impossible. Therefore, we try to look at something that is permanent, which is beyond all these kind of changes. Similarly, Parmenides tries to look into something that is eternal beyond all these changes. That is why his philosophy becomes very important, because for him there should be something. If everything is changing, then we cannot know anything. Therefore, he comes to the conclusion that there must be something that remains unchanging. What this unchanging reality that remains beyond this change? Let us continue with that now. Parmenides' views are presented in a poem which is partly lost and which has two parts. How do you know the views of Parmenides? Parmenides seems to have brought out his views in a kind of a poem, a didactic poem, where there are two parts. Of course, part of this poem is lost, but scholars say that there are two parts to it. What these parts are, how he comes to his ideas, that will form part of our next few minutes. The two parts of his poem are the way of truth and the way of opinion. That is, whenever we talk of something, what that is the truth about it, and how we view about it is the opinion about it. Like for example, when somebody asks you, who is Chandrasekhar, what he is, you will give your opinion. Whether your opinion is the same as who Chandrasekhar is, we can't say. It may be so or it may not be so, because your opinion about Chandrasekhar is your understanding of Chandrasekhar, but what Chandrasekhar is, whether Chandrasekhar knows about it itself is not sure. Therefore, for everything, anything and everything, there is one aspect of what that is and how it is viewed. That is the two aspects which he tries to bring out in this poem.
Excuse me, sir, what will be the case if both the truth and reality happen to be the same accidentally?
Here, I am not saying that it will not be the case. Sometimes it may be the case. For example, when I ask you what this is, you will say it is a watch. It is not your opinion. It is a statement of fact. But when I am going to ask you, how is this watch? How do you like it? That is the place where your opinion comes into picture. This with respect to a particular object that we have. But here, what Parmenides is going to talk of is something that is ultimate, which we may have seen or we may not have seen. So, as a result, whatever we talk of it, nobody has properly seen it. Whatever people have seen has only some part of it or his opinion on that. Therefore, it may be possible that the opinion comes closer to the reality, but it may not be so also. In the case of a watch, fine, you may say that the watch is good, I may say that the watch is good, whereas Vijay Sadhi may say that it is not good. Same is the case, but if it is a truth, can anyone of us say that it is not a watch? Because it is a fact. That is this case. When we talk of reality, since we do not know what it is, we say that it may be this. That is why there are two parts, and how he goes it, that is what we will see now. Parmenides calls this eternal as being. In the two parts of his poem, way of truth and way of opinion, he tries to see what is that reality which remains eternally and which does not change. Parmenides names that eternal which does not change as being, B-E-I-N-G, being. Being is that which is. How he characterizes them, that we will see now. Parmenides calls this eternal as being, as that which truly is. Secondly, Parmenides takes being to be the first principle and also as that which is totally unmixed with not being or becoming. That is, what is the ultimate principle according to Thales? Thales says that water is the ultimate principle, whereas Anaximenes says that air is the ultimate principle. Here Parmenides says that being is the ultimate principle. Moreover, to him this being is eternal, it does not change. So, it is that which is, that is why he says that it is that which is. But what is this being apart from that which is? Parmenides says we cannot explain this positively. Instead, Parmenides tries to explain this being in a negative way, something like it is not this, it is not this. Can you think of anything which says that reality is not this, not this?
It is stated in Advaita philosophy.
Yeah.
It states Maya, not this neti neti.
Not Maya.
Sorry. Neti,
While talking of Brahman,
Brahman.
Shankara says that Brahman is not this, not this, because he says that Brahman cannot be described. Something similar, but I cannot say that it is influence of this or that, but something similar. We have the idea of Parmenides, which says that the being can be characterized negatively. How he does that will form part of our next part. Parmenides on being. Being is absolutely imperishable. Being has neither beginning nor end. Here, being, according to Parmenides, that which is, has no beginning and no end. Why? Because when we say that something has a beginning, we will immediately ask as to what is its beginning, what is the cause. If we are going to say that being has a beginning, can we say that it has come out of being? Because there is nothing else other than being. So, it becomes redundant. Can we say that the being has come out of not being? That also is not possible, because we all know that nothing can come out of nothing, ex nihilo nihil fit, nothing can come out of nothing. Therefore, we cannot characterize being as coming from this or that. Similarly, there is no end to being, it is imperishable, it is that which is and it remains the same always. Thirdly, it has no past, no present and no future. Parmenides says that being has no past, no present and no future. Now, what is this distinction between past, present and future? It is man-made distinction of time, because time is a continuous flow, wherein man divides that continuous flow of time into past, present and future. This division involves change, but being is that which is, which does not change. Therefore, the division of past, present and future cannot be ascribed to being. This is the view of Parmenides. Next, Parmenides says that being is indivisible. What is this indivisibility? Now, we are presently in this room. There are other rooms adjacent to this particular room. This room is divided from the other adjacent rooms because of a particular wall. Now, if the wall is not there, it is nothing but space. The space has been divided on the basis of a wall. This wall is a third entity apart from the space that exists side by side. Therefore, if something is divisible, there must be another entity. Here, being is that which is and that which is alone, there is no other entity. So, how can something else divide it? Similarly, Parmenides also says that being is unmoved and remains undisturbed. It is again the same thing. There is nothing else apart from the being. If there is nothing else apart from being, what can move the being and what can disturb the being? We can be disturbed because of the lighting, because of so many others, or darkness, because light or darkness is different from us, but here there is only being and there is nothing else beyond it. Therefore, it cannot be divided or disturbed. Being is self-identical because it abides in itself, does not pass over into otherness. Here, to him, being is in itself. It is not something else before and it is not going to be something else after. It is that which is always. Maybe we are going to see that now. It can only be characterized as something that is that is exactly, that is all. It can be characterized by isness. Maybe this is the only positive definition that we can give about being, that being is, that is all. Other things that we saw are negative definitions. Students, can you think of something else now? Here being is described negatively, whereas there is the only positive definition that we give here.
Sir, after going through your summary, it looks as though the Parmenid's definition of this is indescribable, and can it be compared to Shankara's Anirvachaniya?
Okay. We try to compare the idea of Parmenides with that of Shankara. One thing at the outset, we cannot exactly compare certain things, but this idea of Parmenides regarding being, which he says that being is not this, resembles the idea of Shankara when Shankara says that Brahman cannot be understood directly. Instead, we can understand it as not this or not this. He calls it as a neti process. Yes, we may characterize it something like that, but then even there we can say that Brahman is that which is. What it is? He says it is nirguna, it cannot be attribute, it is attributeless, something similar to that here. Perhaps when you wait for a bus in a bus stop, you want to go to a particular destination, you see a bus at a distance, you are not able to read the destination board there, but you know that it is a bus. You only know that it is a bus, beyond that you do not know where it is going. Only when it comes near you may be able to find it whether it goes to a place or not. Something similar to that here, we know that it is being, but beyond that we do not know what it is. That is why Parmenides characterizes it as it is, but what it is he does not say. But now he talks of all these ideas of being in the first part of his poem, which deals with the way of truth. He does talk of another part wherein he is going to talk of the opinion. Now we saw what being is in the views of Parmenides. He is also going to talk of how we can view the being. That forms part of the second part. This we can continue at a later time. Now we saw some of the points of Parmenides on being. Now this is what Parmenides understands about being, and he presents these views in the first part of his poem, that is the way of truth, wherein he describes being negatively and finally says that we can only talk of being as that which is. However, there is a second part wherein he tries to deal with being in a different manner. Let us see them now. Being, according to Parmenides, occupies space, is spherical, globe shaped. It is not to be found out by senses but by reason. That is, the second part he tries to talk of being in a very different manner, stating that it occupies space, and he also gives a particular shape, that is, it is globe shaped. Finally, he also says that this being can be understood only by the reason and not by the senses, because to him senses gives you illusory knowledge, whereas it is reason that which can give us the proper knowledge. That is why he brings out this view. However, he does talk of being as occupying a space, because when you say that that which is, it means that it exists. When it exists, it must exist in space. Maybe because of that he talks of this particular thing. However, there is a contradiction here. This particular view, we do not know whether he is talking particularly about a cosmology, and we do not know whether he is talking about other views. This is how he tries to ask.
Sorry for the interruption, sir. Parmenides in one aspect of reality states that reality is indivisible. In another aspect he states that reality has definite shape. How can these two contradictions be justified, sir?
Here one thing, it is a contradiction. That is why scholars themselves say that what is contained in the second part is not very clear, because whether Parmenides talks of being as having shape or things like that, or whether Parmenides talks of somebody else's views, people are not clear. That is a contradiction there, of course. Now with this we will stop at this place now. However, there are much more discussions on Parmenides' views which we will come to later. Let us now summarize what we did so far. Transition of Greek thought from metaphysics to positive science is what we saw, wherein we saw Xenophon's view on God and universe. We continued with Parmenides' view on being. Here we completed the ideas of Xenophon's on God and other planets and things like that. Later on we ventured into an understanding of being as given by Parmenides, wherein I have only told you how Parmenides considered being, but it is not complete, because scholars who came after him have tried to interpret this idea of being of Parmenides in their own understanding, wherein some say that he is materialistic view, we can find a materialistic view there, some say that there is an idealistic view there. This part we will have in the next class, but before that let me give you some important questions with which you will have an idea as to how you can look into the philosophy of the Greeks, especially what we did so far in this class. Number 1, discuss the transformation of metaphysics to positive sciences in the philosophy of Xenophon and Parmenides. Number 2, explain briefly the views of Xenophon on God, describe being according to Parmenides. Students, I think these 3 questions will help you to look into the philosophies that we saw so far and also try to analyze the various ideas that we have seen so far, how Xenophon is a reformer and how Parmenides talks of an eternal amidst the change. Perhaps we can meet after you make a study of this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
sir.